Hello there, welcome back to Max's Cards and Dice Dugout. This is episode 169. And this time out, we are in New Orleans, Louisiana at Tulane Stadium for game number 5 of the 1968 Vikings project. We're using Downey Games Momentum Football to complete this project. And the Vikings, as you can see here, 1-1-2, not off to a great start. They haven't won a game at home. Their only win came on the road against the Packers in game 2. I've already done the determination of the quarterbacks and the punters. Gary Quazzo gets the start for Minnesota. I hear that pronounced, watching NFL films, I've heard it pronounced Quazzo. I've heard it pronounced Quzo. I'm going with Quazzo on that. He's getting the start for Minnesota. I guess Bud Grant's trying to shake things up. That gives Minnesota a -1 on their offensive grade, so it drops them to an E. Billy Comer gets the start for the Saints, and the punters are King Hill and Tom McNeil, respectively, for those two teams. The defensive control factors are identical based on the ratings of offensive defense for both teams. So we will go to the defense drive results on these rolls for both teams. Have to excuse me, I still have not gotten rid of this laryngitis. Okay, so first we're going to determine who gets the opening drive. We use yellow for the Saints, blue for the Vikings. High die gets the ball first, and the home team will get the ties. So it's going to be the Vikings first. Vikings do not have a kickoff return for a touchdown possibility. So we'll take one tick off the clock and we'll roll for their first drive. Okay, we rolled a 3, so this is going to come off New Orleans' defense, and we have a 31, and a 31 is a punt. First, we got to determine the time. 4 ticks off the clock. And we got 4, 5, 7, 13:27. And the drive result is a punt. And we do have a possibility of a punt return for a touchdown for the Saints, and that's not going to happen. So they'll just take the ball. Also, New Orleans is a 0 on momentum at home for starters, so it'll remain there for their first drive. Let's see, we got a 5 and a 1 for 6 off the clock. And a 23 is going to come off of Minnesota's defensive control. And a 54 is a field goal attempt. And that occurs at 11:32. Kicking is Charlie Durkee. And he needs a 1-36 or 11-36, and that is good. I'm not calculating stats for the visiting, or excuse me, other than the Vikings, so excuse me, we won't be concerned about the distance. So it's 3-0, and that is a +1 momentum shift for New Orleans because the field goal gave them the lead. All right, so next possession for Minnesota. Take 1 off the clock for the kickoff. And let's see what happens. You got a 5 and a 2 for 7 off the clock. And 4, 7, 12 would be 8:52. And we have a 5, so it's coming off of New Orleans' defensive chart, and it's a 52. And that's going to also be a field goal attempt. This time it's going to be Fred Cox. And he makes a field goal on 11-46. And that is good. And now we have to determine the distance of the field goal. So we'll roll the die again. 1 times 1 is 1. Plus 3 is 4. Plus 17. That's a 21-yarder. And we are tied at 3. That does not change momentum because Minnesota did not take the lead. So the Saints will get their next possession. 5 and a 1 for 6 off the clock. 4, 9, 10. 6:50 in the first quarter. And we have a 6. It's going to fall in Minnesota's defensive control, and a 22 is an interception. And let's see if that's returned for a touchdown. No, but we will determine who had the interception now. And a 65 is Ursel Maccabee. Or Maccabee, I should say. So that is a momentum-changing play, so we are back to 0. Minnesota has the ball. Still in the first quarter. 6 and a 3 for 9 off the clock. Nine does not fall within New Orleans' defensive control, and a 43 is a key reception. Well, let me get this time first. 10, 16, 3:56 in the first. It's a key reception. And let's determine that. Reception is made by John Beasley. And on a 32, it results in a punt. And that was Beasley. Okay, checking the punts. No chance for a block for Minnesota. So New Orleans takes over on their next possession. We got a 5 and a 1 for 6 off the clock. 10, 11, 13. 153. And we have a 3, falls within Minnesota's defense, and a 55 is going to be another field goal attempt for Charlie Durkee. And that's good. So the Saints go up 6-3, and momentum shifts 1 mark to their direction. Minnesota still in the first. 1 off the clock for the kickoff. And we have a 4 and a 1 for 5 off the clock. It's going to take us right to the end of the first quarter. And a 4 does not, or excuse me, let me get the time again. I keep forgetting to do that. That's 9. Actually, it's not going to take us. There's going to be 9 seconds left in the first quarter. Seven is where the momentum comes into play. Right now it's favoring New Orleans, so it's going to come off their defense. And an 11 is a fumble. They do not have the possibility for a fumble return for a touchdown, but it will shift the momentum in their direction, and that's going to take us into the second quarter. So at the end of the first, it's the Saints 6 and the Vikings 3. We got a 5 and a 3 for 8 off the clock. Ten, 13, 17, be 12 minutes, 17 seconds. We have an 8 that falls outside of Minnesota's defensive control, and a 45 is a key pass for Billy Kilmer. See if this keeps the drive going or not. Roll 53, and that results in a punt. Vikings do have a slight opportunity for a punt return for a touchdown. No. So Minnesota will just take over. Momentum still with the Saints. And the Vikings have their next possession here in the second quarter, trailing 6-3. We got a 4 and a 2 for 6 off the clock. And 6 and 4 is 10, so it'll be at 10 minutes and 10 seconds. We have a 6 that falls to New Orleans' defense, and a 22 is an INT. So Gary Quazzo throws an interception. Momentum is already at a +2 for the Saints, so they just take over. Oh, actually, we have to see if they return it for a touchdown, and no. They do have that opportunity. All right, so now Saints' next possession. 4 and a 2 for 6 off the clock. And we got 6, and 6 is 12. And that'll be at 8-12 in the second. Four and a 3 on the defensive control. Once again is momentum, so it'll come off of New Orleans offense. And a 23 is a quarterback sack. Individual stats for sacks were not recorded in 1968, but it does move the momentum back 1 tick for the Vikings. And it looks like I have to switch pens. I'm running out of ink. Okay. So it's Minnesota's ball, still trailing 6-3. And we got a 3 and a 1 for 4 off the clock. And that'll be 647 in the second. We have a 4 and a 21. That's going to come off of the Saints defense. And that's another interception. So another one for Quazzo. It's going to shift the momentum back. And we'll check for an interception return. No. Close. They needed a 1 to 13 or an 11 to 13, and then we would have had to roll a 23 or less. But that's a no. But momentum shifts back to the Saints, or shifts further for the Saints. They're at a +2. And we'll roll for their next drive. 5 and a 1 is 6 off the clock. We got 9, 12, 13, 453. We have a 5 that falls in Minnesota's defense, and a 53 is another field goal attempt for Charlie Durkee. And that is good. And so now it is 9 to 3. That does not change the momentum, though we're already at +2 because the Saints already had the lead. We switch to Minnesota here in a second. Take one tick off the clock. I might have missed that on the previous kickoff. No chance for a touchdown on a kickoff return. Minnesota's next drive. We got a 3 and a 1 for 4. And 4, 5, 8. It'd be 308 in the second. Got a 4. It's coming off of the Saints defense, and a 13 is a fumble. No chance for a fumble return for a touchdown for the Saints, so they just take over. All right, we're almost at halftime. We got a 4 and a 1 for 5 off the clock. And at 1:29 in the second, we got a 5, falls in Minnesota's defense, and a 31 is a quarterback sack. Which will shift the momentum towards Minnesota. So now it's a +1 for the Saints. All right, continuing on, we have a 6 and a 1 for 7 off the clock. And that's the end of the half. So we end the first half with the score: the Saints 9 and the Vikings 3. Momentum stays with the Saints. They're going to get the kickoff to start the second half. I have no kickoff returns for a touchdown, but we do take one off the clock and roll for their first drive. 4 and a 1 for 5 off the clock. And that'll be 13-13 in the third. We have an 8 that does not fall within Minnesota's defense, and a 41 is a punt. Check for a punt return for the Vikes. No, but they do take over, trailing 9-3. All right, first possession for the Vikings here in the second half. We have a 5 and a 1 for 6 off of the clock. And 7-9, be 11:09 in the third. We have got a 3, so that's going to come off of the Saints defense. And a 15 is a fumble. Can't be returned for a touchdown, but does shift the momentum back to a +2 for the Saints, and they get the ball. Leading 9-3 here in the third. 4 and 2 for 6 off the clock. And 7, 9, 11. That'd be 9 minutes and 11 seconds. You have a 6. Falls within Minnesota's defense, and a 32 is a punt. Check for a punt return for a touchdown. No. Vikings ball. Here in the third, trailing 9-3. Got a 6 and a 2 for 8 off the clock. And 8, 11, 17. Be 6:37. Have an 8. That does not fall within New Orleans defense, and a 63 coming off the Vikings. Offensive drive result is a touchdown pass. Quazzo, 2. None other than Gene Washington. And I gotta look up how to determine the pass, the length of the touchdown pass. And for some reason I'm forgetting that. You have to pardon me. And it is a 6-yard touchdown. Extra point for Cox. It's good. And it is now 10-9 in favor of the Vikings. Momentum does shift over 1 as we wind down the third quarter. 1 off the clock for kickoff. And here come the Saints. We got a 6 and a 4 for 10 off the clock. And that's going to be right at the 3-minute mark in the third. We got an 11. That's going to come off of Minnesota's defense, and a 54 is a field goal attempt. And Charlie Durkee kicks this one, and it is good. So the Saints reclaim the lead, and because they have, that gives them another momentum point, and they are at +2 again, and lead 12-10. Minnesota's next possession as we wind down the third quarter. Got a 6 and a 2 for 8 off the clock. And that's going to be 10, 14 seconds left in the third quarter. We got a 4 that is falling in the Saints defense, and a 46 is a field goal attempt for Fred Cox to try to regain the lead. And that is good. And let's take a look at the distance on that. 6 times 3 is 18, plus 8 is 26. 43-yarder. And it's 13-12 in favor of the Vikings. That shifts momentum 1 to the right. And this first possession for the Saints, or this next possession for the Saints, is going to come in the fourth quarter. Got a 6 and a 1 for 7 off the clock. $10, $13, $14, $12.56. Got a 7. That's going to bring momentum into play. And so it's going to come off the Saints' offensive drive. And a 16 is an interception. First, we'll see if it's returned for a touchdown. No, almost. And now we'll determine who got the interception. The 36. It's going to be Ed Shirachman. I think that's his third of the season. And I believe he's leading the team now. That's going to shift momentum to neutral as the Vikings take over here in the fourth. Leading 13-12. Got a 6 and a 5 for 11 off the clock, so this is a long drive. $12, $17, $23. That's going to be at 9:03. And we have an 11. That's going to come off of Saints' defensive drive result. And a 66 is a touchdown pass, another touchdown pass for Gary Quazzo. And this pass will be to, you guessed it, Gene Washington for 7 yards. Washington is leading the team in touchdowns, with 6 coming into this game, I believe. Now we kick the extra point, and that's good from Cox. And that makes it 20-12. Momentum, for the first time in the game, shifts towards the Vikings. 1 off the clock for the kickoff to the Saints. And we continue on. A 6 and a 3 for 9 off the clock. $12, $15, $20. That's going to be right at 6 minutes. Have a 12. That's going to come off the Vikings defensive control. And a 53 is going to be a field goal attempt for Charlie Durkee. And that attempt is good. And it's now 20-15. Momentum does not change, so it stays with the Vikings. 1 for the kickoff. Off the clock. And we'll roll for the Vikings' next possession. A 4 and a 1 for 5 off the clock. And 7, 8, 9. At 3:49. We have a 7, so that's going to go with the Vikings' offense results. And an 11 is a fumble. My goodness. We got to check this. No chance for a fumble return. But momentum does shift back to neutral. And time is winding down. The Saints are down by 5. 6 and a 1 for 7 off the clock. $11, $16, $17. At 1:37, we have a 6. So that's coming off the Vikings defensive control. And a 65 is a touchdown pass. Billy Kilmer late in the game here. And that is a touchdown pass to Tony Lorick. And it was for 6 yards. Extra point from Durkee is good. And late in the game, Billy Kilmer hits Tony Lorick for a touchdown to give the Saints a 22-20 lead. And that's going to shift momentum over to the Saints. And this is last chance for the Vikings here. Three and a 1 for 4 off the clock. And we have a 4 that's going to fall within the Saints' defensive control. And a 32 is a punt. But we're not going to punt here, of course, because it's late in the fourth quarter and we're going to go for it on 4th down. I just got to refresh myself on this. All right, so we got to roll again. All right, so we got a 6. That's going to fall within the Saints' defensive control, and a 45 is a field goal attempt. And according to the rules, field goal attempt results are instead considered to be failed rush attempts resulting in a turnover on downs. And that's going to do it. Late comeback by the Saints gives them a 22-20 victory over the Vikings. Vikings drop to 1-2-2. So the change that Bud Grant made sitting Joe Cap out. Although Quazzo did throw 2 touchdowns, the defense let them down at the end, allowing the Saints to drive the field and get a short touchdown pass and take a 22-20 lead with 1:37 to go in the game. That's going to do it for this episode. If you hung out with me, I appreciate it. And I'll be back again in the near future with another video. And until then, take care.